as usual, we'll do like a quick one take from everybody about the previous game, the Minnesota game in this case. And then we'll hit the notes, spread it around best we can throughout the game or the
I
show.
went, believe it or not, lighter on the notes because I knew we'd have the whole crew.
Yeah, it's
And
Yeah,
awful.
that makes sense.
these are my light notes, if you can believe that or not.
I
I
I
tell
ag- I agree. I agree.
I tell Phil all the time that if we don't get to something on my notes, I get OCD about it and regretful because like something that I wanted to. At one point in time, I was like, this is going to be really good to talk about. And if we don't get to it, I always am remorseful on that. But the good thing about some of this stuff is like we just talked about their style of play, their formations and stuff like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So it's
I was
fairly
thinking
fresh. I
that
don't want to.
too.
I don't want to repeat like reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and you can tell you haven't gotten in everything you want. Toward the end of the show, you start speaking quickly so you can fit it all in.
I do that.
I
I'm,
love
I'm
it.
glad that doesn't go unnoticed.
Oh, I don't. I think just by me.
People are probably listening to it on one time speed, thinking, "What did I press the wrong button here?" And
I
it's two
know.
times all of a sudden. Yeah,
There are some podcasts where I double check. I'm like, did I hit that button? My gosh, this man is speaking quickly.
it's what happens when I can attest. That's what happens when you're on a time crunch. You're trying to get things
Yeah.
in, and all of a sudden you realize you have about 20 minutes of stuff you need to get in 5 minutes.
Strangely, I feel like Total Soccer Show is one of those shows where I'm like, my goodness, they're speaking fast.
Well, they probably have cutoffs of like we want each person to get their takes in 30 seconds or a
Mm,
minute or something because they do like us regularly where they have like four
yeah.
hosts.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
true. That's true. All right, let's go. I want one more shot of tea. I fell asleep and woke up like 10 minutes ago. It's just a tiring day.
Ready to go.
Ready. I do feel good now, though. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We have a full cast and crew today, and I'm so excited to get started. We have everyone, like I said, it's Matt Baker, Santiago Beltran. Did I get that close, Santiago?
Great job. Great
I've
job.
been
I like
working on
that.
it. Been working on it. And Stuart Holtgren's here to join us. Stuart, let's start with you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be back. It's been a while.
Yes.
Beautiful day in the South City basement that you can't see. That's 90% humidity down here after the rainfall.
Well, you know, the last time we mentioned the basement on the podcast, there have been floods. So, you know, there are blessings and there are curses, I suppose, in this city.
Yeah, no
Matt,
such
how's it
thing
going,
as
man?
a dry basement in the city.
That's true. Also true. What's up, Matt?
All good things. All good things. Phil, we were talking. I had a soccer practice tonight, coaching my girl, and that went great. Getting ready to have a fun weekend of a home match, Sporting Kansas City, and then a playoff match for City 2. I don't think you could ask for much more this weekend.
It's feeling nice. We're feeling confident. We're feeling happy. Good feelings all around. And we're going to talk about some more good things coming up. Santiago, what's up, man? What's new? You made it
No,
today too, and I'm really happy about it.
yeah, doing great. Excited about being on the podcast. I missed the last two or the last three. So excited about being here, talking about St. Louis City, the neighbor in Kansas, and talking about the game. I'm excited about the weekend for sure.
And fresh off the Ravioli Boys commentary on the broadcast, the Spanish language broadcast. That was so cool. And I guess I don't think I know the whole Ravioli Boys story. Like, what made you decide to throw that in on this one?
Yeah, so back on April 1st, when City played Minnesota United FC at City Park, that was like the team of the night. And the team was selling those Ravioli Boys tops. And when that was announced, I was like, oh, I need to have a Ravioli Boys goal call. And then, Minnesota decided to spoil my party and they won 1-0, so no goals to be called. And it's funny because when I was looking at Minnesota before we played them, I remembered that game. I was like, oh, I never got to do that call. And then the day before or that day of the game, City had a post about the game, and they referred to Ravioli. It was like, okay, let's do it.
It was a sign. It made me so happy when I heard it. I always enjoy your calls, but that one I think was the one that made me laugh the most so far this season.
Thank you.
So good. Okay, let's talk about this Minnesota United game. I don't know if we expected this scoreline, but we sure as heck would take it. We're going to give one little take each on what we thought about that game. And of course, I got to bring up the Flyover Fallout that comes out every Monday. That is a deep dive, a nice, quick reaction recap that comes out just a day or two after the game that Matt and Santiago do. And it's awesome. Do check that out on the podcast feed. But for now, Matt, let's start with you on what you thought about that game.
I felt this was reminiscent of the San Jose Earthquakes game, where it didn't seem like a game that we wanted desperately to win. By that, I mean, Carnell often speaks of his blocks of games and wanting to get certain points in certain places. And I felt like this was a match where the rotation going into it, having John Bell start, having Jake Nerwinski out there again, Tomas Ostrak, Celio Pompeu, it was clearly a rotated match. It was our third game in 8 days. But my takeaway is that the rotation held, and we've kind of cemented our ability to bring in subs no matter what our starting 11 looks like to be able to change the game. Talking about the difference makers that kept the scoreline what it needed to be until you had Klaus, Leuven, and AZ sub in. And the way that Carnell utilizes his subs, we've seen so consistently, whether it's one or two, and then another 10 minutes later, one or two, it seems like Carnell's really starting to get into a groove with his tactical subs, and that's exciting to see as we turn this corner.
Yeah, Stuart, I mean, he brought up the lineup from the beginning, and you and I were both giving two different takes on. But I mean, I do want to say that I'm not trying to rub anything in because I ended up being right, but I had just as many doubts as you. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that. Obviously, a rotated lineup, but anything you'd like to say about the Minnesota game?
Well, I think I'm definitely enjoying the crow that I ate after that game. Carnell's squad rotation was very heavy for the Minnesota game, both out of, I think, necessity with Parker and Nielsen, and also out of, I think, some guys needed breaks. And I thought the rotation, it's one of those things that if the rotation works, he's brilliant. But if we lose 3 points and we lose out on that top spot, eventually it's one of those games we probably would have looked back on. But it worked. Guys brought home 3 points, and I'm always happy to be wrong, especially about something like that.
Yeah, and it hasn't worked every time this season for sure. So I definitely understood where you were coming from on that one. Santiago, any thoughts from you on this game?
Yeah, to me, definitely, I got that San Jose vibe when I saw the lineup. And yeah, as Stuart was saying, like it could be one of those that if it goes well, great. If the team loses, people are gonna get mad and start talking about it. But to me, the main thing, even though the rotated lineup like held their own and kept the game scoreless, and then that Minnesota goal happened, I just my main takeaway is just the impact that Klaus, Leuven, and AC Jackson made when they came, and a minute later, City created a chance. So yeah, the rotated lineup works, but sometimes you still need your different makers to be there. And one of you guys was talking about the subs, and it's interesting. Carnell talked about that today. He was saying, like, yeah, and he didn't refer to specific games, and he said, yeah, sometimes the subs have not worked, but that's part of my development as a coach, and the team learns from that. I see that the last few times the subs have been spot on. So yeah, he's perfecting that art of making the subs.
I thought it was really funny the way he answered that question, because I asked it on Thursday's press conference, trying to get to the depth more so than the way he was subbing, because I was trying to get to the fact that we came in with a rotated lineup and we were able to bring in Klaus, Leuven, and AZ, who were all healthy in the second half. Like, they were able to be difference makers when we were able to keep us a clean sheet in the run of play. That's another thing that I take away, is that this was another Minnesota United game where it was a clean sheet in the run of play. They only got their goal off of PK. It was circumstances like the rain, and the rotated lineup did a fantastic job in holding the scoreline. But I love the way, Santi, that he did pivot and talk about that. I think partially because he knows that we've asked multiple times. We talk about it here all the time about how second half subs, and this is another takeaway, second half subs have consistently impacted our ability to not just keep wins, but to come back. And we've often harped on the fact that Carnell's done it too late, or he's waited to be the reactionary coach as opposed to the one who's on the gas pedal and making the changes when he first sees the need for them, or he anticipates something based on what he's seeing in the run of play. And he's the one to facilitate the change and dynamics in the second half. I really think that over the past few games, the comments he said in the press conference on Thursday are absolutely correct. And you can see them, that his growth as a coach, his growth as a tactician in the second half, able to recognize game flow, able to recognize when changes are needed to be made, not just personnel, but overall, if you need to throw in a difference maker to have something be changed in a certain part of the field, he's getting to that. And that's possibly one of the most exciting things to see in the development throughout the season, but also going into the last handful of games and into the playoffs. Because when you get into matches that are in the first round and you have your best of three, and especially after that, it's now or never. Like, you have to be on your game. You have to make these tactical subs. You have to make the full 90 count and be able to change the game yourself. Otherwise, you may not make it very far in the playoffs.
Chris Gebhardt on YouTube adds to that. He says it seems like he's making those subs adjustments a bit earlier, like the 60th minute or so, instead of the 75th minute. I think that's a good point to make as well. My two half thoughts, I'm going to take two half thoughts, if that counts.
That's a full thought.
One is that, Matt, you tweeted it after the game, and I was thinking the same thing. I so much agreed that this Minnesota team, their tactics at home, or whether they changed it up in some way, were just totally different than what we saw when they played in St. Louis. And I think that worked to City's favor. You know, like, if I knew they were going to play like that, it was a lot more open, and they were more willing to give us some space and them some space and attack more. And so if I had known that was going to come, I would have fancied our chances a little bit more anyway. Not that they didn't put up a good fight. Go ahead, Matt.
No, but that credit to Carnell again. He called that out in the press conference a couple days before that Minnesota plays different home and away. So what we see and what we hear from them, it's not, oh, let's take what they say with a grain of salt, because I feel like when we ask the right questions and we get some of these answers, they're being very transparent and being very, they're leading us with breadcrumbs to exactly what they're seeing and giving us little hints that, yeah, they really do know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. And the other one is the depth. You know, it does feel like, you guys kind of touched on this, but it just does feel like the fact that we were able to get several guys healthy again, some of our best players, maybe three, you could even say, depending on which injury you're talking about, and then bring in two more guys, that there's just so much firepower now for Carnell to work with, not to mention kind of figuring out the fullback position, which has just been such a shamble. Or it's been not a shamble, sorry. It's just been being a work in progress throughout the whole season, and it feels much more settled now. And I think it just gives more freedom. You know, there's no worry like, hey, we can bring this guy in, except is this person going to be protected on the wings, kind of thing. So, you know, I think it's just we've settled in at the right time, and, you know, can we capitalize on this final run here into the playoffs? Lots more to talk about here on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for joining us for Flyover Footy. And throughout the week here, we get Santiago, we get Matt kind of going to training, going to press conferences, and we kind of have some thoughts, some notes on the week for St. Louis and Minnesota. So, Matt, if you'd like to get us started on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, this week I feel has been a good indication of just seeing how veterans can react to training and what they need to be doing midweek and as the week progresses later on in the season. Because now that we're about to turn the page into October, we're wrapping up the regular season in the next few weeks. You're seeing some of the things that veterans need to do. Guys like Tim Parker and Joakim Nilsson. Parker sat out training earlier this week, nursing a hamstring injury. He didn't play. One of the reasons he didn't travel and play, him and Joakim Nilsson, were the hamstring injury. The turnaround was too quick for him. Joakim Nilsson, same thing with his knee. So just making sure that these guys were healthy and rested. Sam Adeniran also had a tight calf muscle for the game against Minnesota. These are some of the guys who took things into Minnesota that we didn't really have a lot of insight on, and so they were worked in this week a little more easily. So you have Parker with the hamstring, Nielsen with the knee, Adeniran with a tight calf muscle. You had Edu Leuven and Tim Parker training separately earlier in the week. Rasmus Alm came back after an abdominal groin injury. They were glad that he wasn't necessary to play against Minnesota. They said he could have gone 15 to 20, but all of these guys back into training as of Thursday. It seemed like everybody should be a full go, minus Johnny Nelson and minus Lucas Bartlett, who really hadn't featured for City proper in quite some time. And so when you're looking at who we expect to see minutes or who we would categorize as either necessary or likely to, you're looking at a full health just about. Parker, Nielsen, Adeniran, Alm, Leuven, all back in training on Thursday. The only one who was missing was Josh Yarrow. Josh Yarrow was said to have some back tightness after the game against Minnesota. And so he probably will be questionable on the player availability sheet, I would expect, going into Saturday night. And so he's going to be one of those players that Carnell sees how the treatment responds. And he's one of the only players I believe that is really a question mark going into Sporting Kansas City.
So no one training on the side even. Everyone was full training, full participants.
Lucas Bartlett was over there, and Johnny Nelson was out still. But yeah, none of the players that I mentioned, Parker, Nielsen, Adeniran, Alm, Leuven, they were all with the team.
Man, that's so nice to hear. Santiago, any thoughts from you this week that you saw in training and stuff?
No, it's just very quick. It's great to see that the team has been able to manage some of those minor injuries. That's great going into the playoffs, going with a healthy team and having all those options. And today, Carnell said that, he was like, when all these guys are doing well, yeah, it's a huge problem for me, but it's a good problem to have,
Stuart, anything stand out to you about the news this week? Just like the training and the pressers and the stuff coming out on Twitter this week. Anything you'd like to mention?
Well, one thing that just came out today that everyone should watch is there's a new hype video for this Saturday that absolutely the club knocked it out of the park with. So if you're driving, don't watch it now. But once you get to your destination, pull that one up and watch it. You can see it on the app or on the club's social medias.
Ah, sweet.
Flyover Footy hyping the City app. Look at that.
Well, we want to keep them on our good side here. Keep us on their good side, rather. Well, let's start talking about Kansas City. Matt's got tons of stats or facts brought up here that he can talk about. Matt, lead the way, sir.
Let's jump in like we usually do. Form standings. St. Louis comes into this match, we know, first in the West with 53 points through 31 games on a 16-10-5 record, 16 wins, 10 losses, 5 draws, 58 goals scored, 39 goals allowed. That's a plus 19 goal differential. Keeping in mind that we're an expansion team and we're starting to talk about records as far as goal differential, total wins. City comes into this 10-3-2 at home. City Park is a clear fortress. In the last few games for St. Louis City, we won against Minnesota United 2-1. We drew LAFC midweek, and then we drew Houston the weekend before that. 1-0-2 in our last 3 matches in 8 days. Some interesting notes as far as looking at our goal scoring and some of our clean sheets. We have not lost in a shutout in MLS play since June 7th in the resumption of play against FC Dallas. So if we have a clean sheet or if we shut out, if we are shut out, it's in a tie. Like we are just consistent in that regard. City has also not lost in a shutout at home in MLS play since Minnesota United back on April 1st, and it's the only time this year. I mention these because if we're looking at score predictions and things like that where you do it on the app on Saturdays, think about the fact that we haven't lost in a shutout at home in MLS play since Minnesota. We haven't lost in a shutout in general since June 7th. We haven't lost at home in general since June 21st against RSL, where Leuven, Klaus, and Nielsen were all out. There's a lot of indicators that are pointing to positive things happening for City in this match. Sporting Kansas City, though, just like with Minnesota United hunting for the playoffs, Sporting Kansas City is currently sitting 10th in the West on 38 points through 31 games. They have a 10-13-8 record with 41 goals scored, 44 goals against, and a -3 goal differential. They are 2-7-6 on the road this year. There's also an interesting stat that Daniel Sperry, one of the writers for KC Star, put out on Twitter that I don't have in front of me, but I believe it is the fact that the records of Sporting Kansas City and St. Louis City since May 1st are almost identical, and they have
Yeah.
a
You
one
want me
goal
to say
difference.
it?
Yes, please.
All right. So since May 1st, Sporting KC 10, 6, and 5, and City 10, 7, and 4 over 21 games.
There you go. And this has been, you can see the trajectory of the first half of the season, vastly different for each team, and that's played the difference in where we are now. Both teams in pretty good form. Last few games for Sporting Kansas City, though, have been very up and down. Their last three, they won at home 2-1 over the Houston Dynamo. They lost 3-0 at home against Nashville, and they won 1-0 away at Minnesota. Since Leagues Cup, Sporting Kansas City is 3-3-0. Very topsy-turvy. And they're able to do this against teams of vastly different styles. And I asked Carnell about that on Thursday's press conference. And it's very, very respectable about what their DNA is. They know the DNA of Sporting Kansas City. They know their style of play and what they like to run at you, regardless of who their opposition is. And I think it speaks more to Sporting Kansas City's ability to play within themselves as opposed to dictating their play to try and stymie the opposition. Talking about teams like Houston, Minnesota, Miami, St. Louis, San Jose. When we talked about the styles of play from possession to pressing all across the board in these, and they're pretty much even since Leagues Cup in all of these. So the way that they play, and St. Louis has seen them twice that we're going to get to, but it's just interesting that 3-3-0 since Leagues Cup, and they've had a couple wins here in the past few games. They're coming into this not in the greatest of forms, but they're coming into this fighting for their playoff lives.
Great. Let's go straight into availability. This is always super helpful from you guys throughout the week. I encourage everyone to be following Santiago and Matt on Twitter or X to find this kind of stuff out regularly. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So the availability as of last week, they had a couple players out last week. Courtney Ford, Caden Pierre, but the questionable list is actually going to be fairly interesting from an injury perspective. So they had Graham Zusi questionable. They have Tim Leopold questionable. The two difference makers that are going to be very, very important to watch for. One is that Johnny Russell is out for this game against St. Louis City. Johnny Russell picked up a red card suspension last week against Houston, and they appealed it. Sporting Kansas City appealed it this week. Their appeal was not only denied, but Russell was further fined for time wasting, which was hilarious to see.
Yeah.
So they've had that to deal with, and obviously Peter Vermes not happy about that, but we're not going to have Johnny Russell patrolling the wing. We also don't know how much we're going to see of Alan Pulido. Alan Pulido with a quad contusion last week. He had a quad injury that kept him out previously, and Peter Vermes has said that he will likely be in the game day roster, though he doesn't know if he's going to start or feature. And it sounds really guarded as far as how much of Alan Pulido we're going to see.
Pulido just got a new contract, so he's going to be with Kansas City. I think it was a 2-year extension or something like that.
2026, I think.
Oh, so longer than that.
Yeah, through
or maybe 2 years extended on top of this season. Either way, and everyone's just been talking him up, saying he's one of the best, natural number 9s in MLS, which is pretty high praise. And I don't know if I disagree. He was great in that game against St. Louis in Kansas City.
I like how he plays when he's healthy. That has been his problem, that he has missed a lot of time for Sporting KC. But this year he has been doing so well. 13 goals scored. He scored 2 goals against City, and I like how he moves and how he plays when healthy. It's just that he has been unlucky with the injuries.
Yeah, and you look at what Sporting Kansas City has done, and I think you can attribute a lot of their success in the past 2/3 of the season to Pulido and Russell. You look at guys like Eric Talmy and Daniel Shallowy. They've been with the team for basically the entire season. Tommy's had 29 games started. Shallowy's had 30. But Pulido and Russell, they've missed significant time this year, with Pulido having 23 games started, Russell with 19. And so it really does feel like Sporting Kansas City is a vastly different team when they don't have these two goal scorers, these two chance creators on the team. And they're really key to a lot of their top statistical categories. Their top goal scorers overall, Pulido leads the team with 13. Shallowy has 7. and Johnny Russell has 5. Eric Tommy has 4. Everyone else 3 or below. And nobody else's XG is above 2.7 outside of that core group of 4. These are the 4 players to keep in mind. Well, 3 if you don't count Russell because he's out. Since League's Cup, in fact, the goal breakdown has been basically that. It's Alan Pulido with 3 goals, Daniel Shallowy with 2, Johnny Russell with 2, Eric Tommy, Gadi Kinda, they've each had 1, and they've only had 10 goals. So these are predominantly their goal scorers, especially in the past few games. Even assist-wise, Shallowy has 5 assists, Tommy has 5 assists, Gadi Kinda 4, Russell 3, everyone else 2 or below. Key passes even, the passes that get into the final third, into the penalty box, that lead to some of these shot creations. Overall in the season, Shallowy has 53, Eric Tommy 41, Johnny Russell 27, Alan Pulido 24, and nobody else above 20. The ball moves through these 4 players, and as they go, so goes their team. So it's not a surprise if you're taking 2 of these players out of the equation that they're going to be a significantly different team.
Interesting. It's going to be kind of like if we had 2 Leuvens and both of them were out in a game or something like that.
But it really is a lot similar to what City's struggles have been without Klaus and Leuven.
Yeah.
It's taken multiple games to figure out what to do for City when we're missing one and both of them. For Sporting Kansas City, they've been kind of up and down as far as Pulido's injury, but when they're missing both of them, they really struggle to find their own identity.
Yeah, and so, can they respond? Like St. Louis did. I mean, gosh, we're so lucky to have a team that did figure that out. Stuart, any thoughts on any of these? I know that Johnny Russell red card is kind of a crazy one. Any of these other guys out, or what SKC is going to do with their personnel in this one? Any thoughts?
Well, Johnny Russell has a huge impact on the field from an offensive standpoint, but he's also Sporting KC's captain, and he's a huge leadership voice for that club. So not having him available for the next 3 matches is really a huge blow to Sporting KC beyond simply what he'll bring on the field. On the away game in Kansas City, his tackling was he was very aggressive on his tackling, so it caught up to him against Houston. But there were a couple times against us where he came in studs up for the ball, and it's really close to just moments and inches away from getting carded, and he definitely earned that red card at a really bad time for him and the club. Great time for us, and really, Sporting fans will be melting down if they have to see Shelton leading the line on Saturday. But I would well, knock on wood, I would love to see that, but now that I say that, I have a bad feeling.
I mean, he's just like the quintessential Scottish player. He is such a good leader. He's very fiery on the field. He's very talented and puts in heavy tackles, like you said. But he's also like the one that frustrates the most because he will dive quite often. It's like a weird mix of the two that you often see with these Scottish guys.
Oh, yeah. And Russell was the one who jumped into the stands, remember, to yell at some of the fans in the Cauldron. Was that earlier this year or last year?
I feel like it was last year, but I would mess that up.
Could have been earlier this year, but I don't remember the exact time.
Fiery man. Another funny one is that SKC is in 10th place, and as Matt said earlier, still in the conversation for the playoffs because this is MLS, right? And that's one of the stories that Matt has for us here moving forward.
Yeah, I have 2 big stories to follow. The first is obvious. It's the 3rd time these teams have met. St. Louis City won 4-0 on May 20th, and Sporting KC won September 2nd. The differences here, and you could see these carrying forward into what the biggest difference is this weekend, is where City won. It was their first match they won without Klaus. The 2-1 win that Sporting Kansas City had, Klaus didn't start. So I asked him today or in the Thursday press conference, because Klaus was available, the fact that he hasn't played a full 90, he hasn't been fully fit in any of these games. So does this mean a little extra to him? And he played it cool as a cucumber. No, it's just it's another game. It's the next game. It's big because we have opportunities to make the playoff stretch easier for ourselves, home field. And we know our fans want this. So he had those those typical things you would expect him to say, but I think he's excited for it just because this is his first opportunity to really get into the foray, into the mix of Sporting KC, St. Louis City for the full 90. And the other big story that I have, which is kind of interesting from a laughing at Sporting Kansas City perspective, is that Sporting Kansas City's on the cusp of history themselves. They haven't missed the playoffs in back-to-back years since 2007. They joined the Western Conference in 2015, so they've at least made the playoffs every other year since joining the conference. A loss plus FC Dallas, San Jose Earthquakes, and the Vancouver Whitecaps winning will make it awfully difficult for Sporting Kansas City to come back. So look at this game as St. Louis City has the opportunity to win and put ourselves in home field advantage in the first round and near driver's seat of winning the conference in our first year. Massive history, absolutely insane amount of history there. But we also have the opportunity to deal the death blow for Sporting Kansas City's playoff chances, where they would miss the playoffs back-to-back for the first time since 2007.
Oh, man. How does that make you feel, Stuart?
Oh, full of joy. Especially next week against RSL away. I mean, there's no easy games left. And Minnesota is going to want revenge on that final decision day to get an away win in KC after KC won in Allianz. If they were knocked out. But it really does show how successful Sporting has been. And ultimately, their model is one for a mid-market team such as St. Louis that I think a lot of clubs in MLS want to follow. They kind of have that ideal success rate.
Yep. The parity has finally caught up to them a little bit here. And I'm so glad you said that, Stuart, because yes, there are rivals, but they have been so successful. They are a historic club. We are willing to admit that every weekend, but maybe not once Saturday hits, right? All right. Good stuff. Matt, poor Matt has so many notes that we have to cover here, and we probably only got about 7 minutes for you to do some of that, Matt. So I'm going to let you go, Matt, and then we'll do our guesses for the weekend as soon as the time comes. I'll cut you off here.
This is where we joke that I sound like I might be going 2 times speed, but I promise I'm not. So don't adjust your podcasts. We know a lot about Sporting Kansas City. We know they play in a 4-3-3. We know that their style is the antithesis of St. Louis City. We've played them twice. Like I mentioned earlier, they're not really surprising in what they do, but just some things to look at when you're watching this is we know St. Louis is the most direct and has the second fewest passes per sequence. We're a very quick team, very direct team. Sporting Kansas City is on the opposite end of that spectrum near a Seattle Sounders, Columbus Crew. They're the 8th slowest team in MLS in direct speed, the 5th most passes per sequence. They're very methodical in what they do. They have a transition offense, but it is a lot more methodical in the sense that they will wait to get numbers high. But the moment that they do, they'll work the ball in from those wide angles, having to spread the defense out thin, and they'll pounce on those goals. It's exactly how they stretched us out when we played them on September 2nd, and they look to do that regularly. It's not an aberration. Specific emphasis that they play on central players hanging back to find space. Think Alan Pulido, think Eric Tommy in the game that we played in Kansas. And they look to wear out their opponents, especially those who press by quickly moving the ball around the field. They possess, they switch a lot. They'll move the ball around. They have some of the highest numbers of 10-plus passing sequences. If anybody remembers the match we played against them on September 2nd, they were coming off of some of the most record-setting number of passing sequences. They had multiple 20-plus pass sequences in the game before us that they played. This team is not afraid to possess the ball, not afraid to move the ball around. They control over 50% of the possession through their entire defensive half on both wings, just all over the field on their own side. The only area of the field that they do not control greater than 50% possession is between the channels in the opposition half. And that's the exact opposite for St. Louis City. St. Louis City, we know they when they play it out of the back, they play it very intentionally from their center backs, and they try to move the ball up the field quickly. Think of Parker to Blom up to AZ, very quickly moving it up, or sending it to a fullback that moves up the space, sends it across. Vastly different ideas, and if St. Louis is successful, then they'll be able to counterattack Sporting Kansas City. That's what a key to this match is going to be, is St. Louis City often inviting Sporting Kansas City, but staying tight and compact, especially in the middle, not allowing space, not allowing some of those transition moments to spread out and provide space between our fullbacks and our center backs. Go back and watch the game a little bit, watch the highlights from September 2nd, because both of those goals are examples A and B of what we need to watch out for consistently. That's a hallmark of their offense. Those aren't lucky goals. They weren't random. They were very intentional, and they are very successful when they're able to do that.
Even when you think about, so Kansas goals, are definitely what you're talking about. But if you go back and look at City's goal, same thing. What you were saying, like close down the middle and then quick transitions. That's how Sam Arena scored that goal.
Yeah, and the great thing is, Sam Adeniran almost had a second goal, but if he wasn't ruled offside in that September 2nd game. And you look at what Klaus will be able to do and what he'll try to do, and it's holding those same lines and trying to have those those line breaking runs. And when he's successful doing that, he plays the ball off to our fellow attackers very well. Look to see AZ Jackson involved in a whole lot of these attacks. If Rasmus Alm's out there, the same. Nico Gioacchini. You look for a lot of these quick playing movements when we stretch the field a lot. And some of the passing sequences, some of the passing networks that we've seen from Sporting Kansas City really speak to that, where they're very tight and compact in the central midfield, and they create a lot of wide space. So their attackers in this 4-3-3 do tend to be very wide. When you have Shallowy and when you have Russell out there, they're very successful moving it wide. So that's going to be some of the big question marks, is with Russell out and with Pulido potentially out to start the game, are they going to have as much success finding space and be as high level as they usually are with these players in pulling some of the backline defenses wide and creating space, either hanging back or with some of the quick movements into the channel? And I don't know that they've really shown that this year. That may be one of the big issues that they've had, is the individual high level abilities for Sporting Kansas City are so strong. They create a ton of chances through individual skill with their three attackers, with Eric Tommy, with Gadi Kinda. And if they are losing two of these players, that's just less for City to have to focus on when it comes to these high level 1v1s. And I think that gives City an absolute implicit advantage.
Stuart, any thoughts on what you think KC might be doing in this game, or maybe what you'd like to see from either team in this game?
We'll get into lineups in probably a few minutes if we have time. But personally, I would obviously love to see Adeniran get revenge off that second goal that he got called offsides for. So a big match from him, and a brace would be what I would like to see, especially tactically wise. I mean, I always want to take it to them when you're at home. And I mean, I expect we'll see that as well.
I agree. I always hammer, interceptions and dual percentage when we come up against teams like this. And Kansas City got us in the last one, and I think that was a big part of it in that game. And the stats did kind of point that out as well. And so, with or without Johnny Russell, Pulido, that's still something that Sporting Kansas City is always going to have on their side as long as Peter Vermes is at the helm. And it's always been that way since the beginning of time with him. So, I just watch for that with City. I hope they do a little bit better job winning those duels, being the better man 1v1 in those situations. And it's going to be a challenge for sure. And, and it's interesting to watch too. I rewatched that game, and KC would have these several passes long, and the more they pass, the longer they have possession. That's kind of like the more that they get invited into our half of the field. And while that's not how City wants to play, that's also where those transition moments are so lethal with Sam Adeniran, especially in that last game. So, it's a scary game of baiting people back and forth, and it'll be an interesting one to watch. I do think that their injuries are going to hurt their goal scoring opportunities. So I think that's like, if they're going to have to defend all the better. So if we can just get one of those goals, Stuart, I love that shout for a brace for Sam. Let's make that happen, because I think it's going to be over at that point if it does. And Matt, I kind of cut you off too soon. I thought you had a lot more to say. We have time for a little bit more if you'd like to, and then we'll do predictions.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys, do you think Sporting Kansas City comes into this game knowing that they might be down in their attack? Do you think they still attempt to be all out to win this game, or knowing that they're coming in here, a point would help them further climb into that 9th spot? Would they ever be satisfied with a point, or is this more of an opportunity for City because they're going to be willing to and almost need 3 points coming out of this, leaving themselves a little potentially exposed, especially compared to how they've been playing, where they're more dropping back and not protecting against the counterattack.
To me, they are coming with that need of getting 3 points, and I think that's what they are gonna game plan for. If they get 1 point, they are still not out, but then you start depending on other results. Remember that they have played one more game than Dallas, San Jose, Vancouver. So after this game, they will only have 2 left, and if City wins and Dallas, San Jose, Vancouver win, like it will be too difficult for Sporting KC to make up that difference. So I think they're gonna try to go all out, and that's gonna create some spaces and opportunities for City.
That's exactly what I was thinking, to the point where it's even more of an advantage for City because the pressure is entirely on Kansas City in this match. St. Louis would be, I think we would all as fans be disappointed with the draw. We would be absolutely devastated with the loss, but the pressure is on Kansas City to get 3 points at City Park to keep their playoff hopes alive in practicality. Like, they would be able to do it, but it'd be so difficult with a loss. And so they're going to be playing, I think, so much more aggressively than we're used to, even without their skilled goal scorers in Russell and Pulido. If Pulido's able to make a go at it in the second half, that could be a difference maker to watch out for. But these provide opportunities to free the midfield up in some of those half spaces where we're able to be a little more intentional with allowing them to, almost inviting them to come into our defensive half and then cut off these spaces and move the ball quickly. So we can be a little more methodical than I think we may used to be, but still we need to keep that fighting edge. We can't be too lackadaisical in this and very, very quickly cut off spaces in the lanes. That's going to be where the thing to watch is, how effective are we in our defensive half? Because that's where everything is going to start. It usually does when we start these transitions, but it's going to be more so where Sporting Kansas City is going to be trying to find all these spaces and trying to find quick opportunities, because if they don't get a goal in the first half, I think they start to get a little more desperate. And then the second half subs, where that could be, if the game progresses to a tie or a draw in the second half, I think the second half subs that Vermes is going to be making, likely with Pulido being one of them, is going to lead to a little more desperation. And so if that happens, City has an even bigger opportunity to spread the field and be catching them in some overloads in their attack, in our attacking half. And that's where a lot of the opportunities to really open up the game will be in the second half.
Interesting. They're almost like, I guess you guys are kind of, a short way to say that is they're handcuffed by their schedule. It's too difficult and they don't have enough points. And they don't have much choice here, do they?
No, honestly. And that's why things like the beginning of the season run, when you compare records since May 1st, matters to an extent in form. But when you start off as hot as St. Louis did and you start off as cold as Sporting Kansas City did, it leads to these desperate moments, 2, 3, 4 games from the end, where you're not just fighting to say, oh, we want to wrap this up with 2 games to go. You're saying we need to be more desperate. We need to play outside of ourselves a little bit and be more willing to go after something to get goals, to win on the road, putting yourselves in such a bad position. And that's what Sporting Kansas City's done. They've put themselves in a really poor position to be able to not just say that we control our own destiny, but saying we not only need to win, but we need other teams to lose. And that's always a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and that 21 game comparison since May 1st, as I think about it, so before May 1st, Alan Pulido was out for Sporting KC for a while. Yes. And then if you think about City after May 1st, obviously that was the beginning of Klaus being out. And then City lost Leuven. So it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Exactly.
Exactly. I like it. All right, it's prediction time. This is Flyover Footy. We're on the big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you feel well informed for this game coming up against Kansas City here in just a little bit if you're listening on the radio. And Matt, let's start with you. Let's get a lineup at least. I don't know if we'll have time for score predictions, but we'll see. Go for it.
I think we'll make it. I wanted to see either one attacking fullback. And so I've got Marcanic, Nilsson, Parker, Nerwinski on our back line, plus Berkey. Leuven and Blom in the midfield. AZ and Stroud in our attacking mids. Klaus and Nico as our attackers. And my score, because I'll just go ahead and add my score prediction, is 3-1 City.
Santiago?
I have the same lineup as Matt, except I have Celio instead of Stroud. And my prediction is 2-0 City.
All right. What do you think, Stuart?
My lineup is also similar, but I'm going to have Adeniran instead of Nico. And I think that right back spot is going to be the really interesting one. Do you go with Nerwinski or Watts at this point? And I'm going to go 3-2 with Sporting getting a late consolation goal for a game that's not as close as the score.
Yep. Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, let's make sure to get the playoff scenario to keep in mind, too, because that's important to know going into this. A win by St. Louis City on Saturday over Sporting Kansas City clinches home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. A win with a tie or loss by both Seattle and LAFC. Seattle plays on Saturday. LAFC plays on Sunday. Tie or loss by those teams would clinch the Western Conference Championship. There's no other scenario that really can occur because of Vancouver's draw on Wednesday. So it's these scenarios. We need Seattle to lose or draw on Saturday. We need LAFC to lose or draw on Sunday. And we need St. Louis City to win against Sporting Kansas City.
God bless you guys putting out these scenarios because it's not something I want to think about. I just want to read it and be done with it. So thank you. Just quickly, mine is Stuart. I'm mind melding with you. I absolutely agree. I think Sam starts this one over Nico just because of what happened in that last game. I think he's in their head a little bit. And yeah, the right back question. It's a big one. I hope we can talk about it a little bit more as we go into the wind down, which is the last portion of our podcast version of our show here. So if you're listening on the radio, you can catch another 30 minutes of more laid back conversation and talk about what we just feel like talking about on the team, about City and the games that come up. Sometimes we touch on that. Sometimes we touch on just off topic stuff. So please do join us on the podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast, we're there. We're on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, review. It helps us. I'm sorry, I had to say it. That's it, everybody. We're Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you again for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Go City.
All right, we're out. Fun one, guys.
Yeah,
Always is with the group.
I'm gonna have to drop off pretty soon, but I would like to hear more about that right back take because I thought Nerwinski has been impressive his last couple matches.
Yeah,
that's the one thing I wish we would have called out explicitly is he's really come back into his own.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Stuart, could you stay on like 5 or 10 minutes and we can just give you a chance to say some things before you go?
Sure. I'll stay on for a few minutes. I'll just have to find a breaking point to kind of shift off.
Yeah, that sounds good.
You can Irish exit it. It's totally fine.
All right.
Irish exit.
Let's just plan on that.
I feel like I'm allowed to say that.
Let's rotate our no. Yeah, Matt, do you have your beer with you?
No, let's do start. Oh wait,
yeah, I was gonna say. Oh, okay. I'm gonna be real fast.
I forgot what you were doing for a second. I thought you meant go get one and I'll let Stu talk. I forgot we did.
Phil froze up, so you're not talking to him right now.
Oh, that's even better. So I've got a Four Hands Fest beer today, and the first time while we wait for Frozen Phil to come back, first time I got this, I thought for sure it was going to be an Oktoberfest because why not? It looks like an Oktoberfest, right?
Yeah.
Was very, very shocked that it was not an Oktoberfest. It's delicious, but it is not an Oktoberfest. A fest beer is not always a Märzen.
Speaking of Oktoberfest, and is that Urban Chestnut?
This is Four Hands.
Four Hands.
I will be at Urban Chestnut on Friday.
I know that. I think this is actually the first year in the last 4 years or so that they didn't use the picture of you and Michelle in their promotional stuff.
What's up with that?
We
did last year and the year before at least. So,
I mean, I'm okay sharing the spotlight, but I got a memory on Facebook on it today, and so that was fun to see. I totally forgot about that. Where they're like, so cool. Be like the Bakers and find a sitter. And they had pictures of our kids.
Hey, the good news is Matt will be there on Friday. So guess whose picture is gonna show up on next year's campaign?
Exactly.
I'm borderline. I think I'm gonna wear my City kit under my Lederhosen.
I thought you were gonna get a City Lederhosen.
Next step.
City red.
Next year, I should have planned it.
We need that to happen. I would buy it too. I looked at Lederhosen recently. I kind
I
of
love
them.
them. They're so fun.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna hit record so we can get Stuart in here.
Yeah, Sarah has some friends who are really involved in the German Cultural Society here locally, and when they talk about Lederhosen, they're talking about like hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth, and I think they're flying out to Germany to get it custom made out there, and so I mean they probably spend thousands on this stuff. It's just
I'm a wee bit jealous.
Yeah. But I mean, you spend thousands of dollars on City merch a year, so I mean,
true,
fair. Priorities.
We all have our priorities. And we're blessed with the ability to
Absolutely.
spend.
Pursue those. Yep.
All right, here we go. Welcome everyone to the wind down. It's officially begun.
Cheers.
Stuart can't stay with us long, so I want to make sure,
Cheers.
Stuart, you shine in the wind down. It's my favorite portion to have you in on, and so I want to give you a chance to talk about whatever you want. I don't know if you have anything you can tease today, but please do that if you can before you go, and then kind of talk about what you like.
I can't say anything, to be honest, but
I had to try.
I am going to have fun on Saturday, and I think everyone else will have fun on Saturday.
Yes.
It's at the end when we were talking about lineups, kind of touched on the right back question of Nerwinski and how he's kind of come back into the fold a little bit with his good form. And now that I'm thinking about it, do you guys think there's any way that Nelson gets a third chance, really? Or is Marcinic so stamped in that, yeah?
No, I'm sitting here nodding. I'm shaking my head, and I think I'll make a bold prediction right now since we're on the wind down. I think Johnny Nelson has played his last minutes with City.
I don't think that's too bold, to be honest. I like Johnny as a person, but I don't think that's too bold.
I loved him at the beginning of the season, and I love him as a player. And his story coming back from freaking back surgery is incredible. But I just don't see it in the tea leaves of City's roster construction right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Matt. And yeah, Johnny Nelson is a great guy. But when City signed Marcinic, I think that the writing on the wall was kind of there, especially with Marcinic doing so well. And so yeah, sadly, I think you are correct, and he won't play anymore unless something happens,
Which anything could happen too, right? Because all of a sudden we're talking about Jake Nerwinski on the right side stepping back in and being as viable as he was at the beginning of the season. Everybody has their ebbs and flows in form. Carnell's really a man of, if you prove yourself in training and you be that best person at your position, you're going to find time in games. And it just doesn't seem like that's been the case for Johnny Nelson.
Yeah, and he's also injured, so that's not going to help his cause.
Exactly.
Nelson's injured? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he's out for 2 to 3 weeks now with, I believe it was a hamstring injury.
I think if he doesn't play for us, I could see him getting another shot next year, but I think ideally he goes somewhere else. Maybe it's just to see a fit, a style fit. So I hope that's all it is. And I do think he'd be very serviceable anywhere. I think he's going to make a comeback.
Agreed.
What do you think, Stuart? Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I could see him fitting for one of the bigger USLC clubs if he goes to like a San Antonio next year or Rowdies. One of those who are willing to pay a little bit more for a little bit more quality, like what Johnny would bring to the table. Be curious to see how he did. I did learn this last week that the Swiss League is hard to follow. I don't know if you guys saw or were tracking Pedro's start for Zilm.
I couldn't.
No, so FOTMob's really the only way, unfortunately. But I think he went. They got. I think it was this most recent game that they got absolutely pounded.
Both the last games. I think there was a cup match that I couldn't find a lineup for exactly, but yeah, I think they've lost like a total in the last 2 games. It's like 14-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
Oh my
12-2. They lost 5-1 to Banik Ostrava, which is, I honestly have never heard of that team. So they're not losing to like Young Boys or
But his team is like a lower table team. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
yeah, no, they're Czech Republic League. I was thinking Swiss League for a while.
Yeah. But they
Yeah.
they were when he was loan. I think they were like second to last or maybe last position.
Yeah, they're last. Negative
Okay.
17 goal differential in 9 matches. That's pretty rough.
Ooh,
That's
that's
rough.
It's going to be a tough season for him. I hope he helps him improve at the very least. But Stuart, I don't think we answered, and I think we should start with your opinion. What is the Nerwinski versus Watts argument after that last game? Because Nerwinski looked really good, didn't he?
I think he earned another opportunity. I've been pretty critical of Jake over the course of the year. I think some of that's founded and some unfounded. But he really performed well, and I think you reward that good form with a start here. And then we find our ideal 11 and nail it down before the playoffs begin.
On the ideal 11, it's funny because I always view our asymmetrical approach as kind of the thing that best suits us. So you have 3 at the back when you're on the attack, and you take one of your fullbacks, you move them forward. This last game we actually ran out with Hebert and Nerwinski. Or I'm sorry, wasn't it Hebert and Nerwinski get the start last week? So we had 2 defensive-minded fullbacks, and Jake Nerwinski has said it himself that Carnell kind of views him more defensive-minded versus Akil, and that seems kind of obvious, but it's the truth nonetheless. And most of the time this year, we've actually run with either Hebert or Watts or Marcanic or Nerwinski lately, and it's interesting that we were able to win with 2 defensive-minded fullbacks. Jake Nerwinski gives amazing service in the into the attacking third. His crosses are fantastic, and the thing that I think really you can point to that hits Stu's comment is the fact that if you watch the replay of the Minnesota game, and Santi and I talked about this on Fallout, right as he's getting ready to cross to Klaus, you can see that you don't need to say words. You just do a quick little point, and Nerwinski placed it in the perfect space. Klaus knew exactly where he needed to be, and he found it. If you're basically needing to find people who can feed Klaus the ball to an extent. Like, Klaus is such a clinical goal scorer that if you can trust that Jake Nerwinski can send in these balls and have this kind of relationship with Klaus, like that's got to increase like some implicit XG stat somewhere. Like, just the comfortability of it, like G+ or one of those stats that lead into like what you do on and off the ball. Like, Klaus seems like he plays well with that type of a player. And if it's the same type of player you can count on to be solid defensively, both as a right back and as a right center back, which Nerwinski has shown he can do both of very well, then totally agree with Stu.
I think that quote really weighed on me, and I overthought it. And so I'm going to share these overthoughts with everybody here since it's the wind down. That it was I could tell by the way Nerwinski phrased his response, like he made it clear that Carnell thinks of him as a defensive fullback, but that it seemed like he didn't want to admit like that's not necessarily true. And I got that vibe at least. So I thought that was super interesting. And so, I only say that because you also mentioned that he played with Hebert. But in the past, I think he was used with Marcanic, and he was told recently, it was like one wrinkle recently where he stayed back as like that third defender rather than it being Blom or Hebert or whatever. And so I do think that was kind of a single game thing. So I don't want to nail him down, perhaps. I want to give him a chance because like you said, I think he's got, unfortunately for him, I think he has the second best wide service out of all of our defenders. And I think the best might be Watts, but he's better than both our left backs, or all of our left backs for that matter, whoever you want to consider. So that was such a cool wrinkle, though. I'm so glad you guys pointed out that. I think it was actually, it wasn't a podcaster that pointed that out originally, was it? I think it was like a City fan. It was cool. Either way, it's a really cool thing to see that play out. Stuart, anything else you want to mention in this one?
I know there's some questions about the City 2 playoff game, but
It's coming. It's coming.
It's going to be amazing.
First ever professional playoff game at City Park.
I love that.
Interesting.
First of many, many, many of those home playoff games to come. Just one thing, I'm going to have to drop off, but if you guys have thoughts about the Inter Miami season ticket price rise for next year at some point, or if people want to look that up on their own time, just something to be thankful of our front office on, that we're not, even after this successful year and how huge the demands become, we're not really seeing a massive spike in ticket prices.
That's massive. I agree.
Yeah, 2 to 3 times this year is what I saw.
That's
And-
Yes, somewhere as much as 5 times.
Yeah, and part of me is not surprised, although obviously disappointed because of what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, that Messi's not guaranteed to play at all. And so to charge Messi prices for every game, every home game of the season, where he's just as likely to play as any other player, he's just as likely to get injured as any other player, more so even with his age and just the way all the the human body works. And you're asking every single one of your season ticket holders to pay as if they're getting guaranteed to see Messi every game. That does rub me a little bit the wrong way, and I think it furthers the issues that we saw in the first few games that Messi played in Leagues Cup, where the Drive Pink Stadium was not full for every single one of those games, because the ticket prices, the individual ticket prices, were so exorbitant. They were so gougy that it priced a ton of people out. And the happy medium that we wish could have been found, it seems like Miami has just gone full on into, we think everybody's going to pay this for the chance to see Messi, even if it's thousands of dollars more than they paid for the privilege to see him without those costs. And so I'm sure on some level, Miami's like, oh, well, we didn't increase their ticket prices this year to see Messi, and so next year they should be thankful that we didn't do that, and this makes up for it. I'm sure there's some way they talk themselves into it, but it's really unfortunate for any soccer fan in Miami, especially, because this is not how you build a fan base. It's not how you retain a fan base. It's not how you continue to grow the soccer culture in any given market. And I wonder what it's going to do for the long-term viability of Inter Miami, because the odds of a team taking a season ticket price and lowering it by a significant margin any given year, regardless of the factors, that chance is so minute. Like, can you imagine if City 5 years from now were just to say, you know what, we think we had, your prices were too expensive this year, and so next year we're going to lower them by 15%. Can you ever imagine a professional a club doing that, especially in America? I could never imagine that. So now you're getting to a point with Inter Miami, thinking long term. Messi's only going to be here for another year and a half, 2 years, or whatever his contract is. So what happens after that? Is Inter Miami and their
they
fans
get the new stadium bump is what they're going to expect. And
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I
So
think they're
that's fair.
gambling on all of that. Yeah, Messi's gonna be gone in 2 years, but besides having Messi, I think they're also doing some good things with the way they are handling the roster and getting some young players. And I think they are counting on that these players will develop within the next 2 years, and that they're going to continue having a good team and the new stadium. So I think for now they are not worried about that. And it's one of those things like you have enough demand that if some season ticket holders walk away, there's probably going to be somebody who will be willing to pay that price, even though it's unknown if Messi is going to be healthy and when he's going to be back and all of that. So, but yeah, it's an interesting situation. But I think they're just gambling on having Messi for some games and putting together a good team and then the new stadium. So for now, I don't think they're worried about that.
Yeah, and Chris kind of mentioned something in the chat that was rumored earlier this season once Messi came along. It'll be really interesting to see how Eastern Conference teams handle their season ticket packages for next year. I think most of them have released their information already. However, there was a rumor earlier this year when Messi came over that tickets against Inter Miami were going to be removed from season ticket holder packages and sold on a la carte basis, basically. I haven't seen any of those yet, but I think once the schedule gets announced, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see like a New England Revolution or a Chicago Fire.
Oh yeah,
Chicago
pull something
Fire.
like that.
Charlotte.
Just squeeze as much money out of it. I'm still not convinced that we're going to see Messi play on turf. I mean, he's mysteriously been absent so far. That Charlotte game will be the last one on decision day. So if he's going to play, I guess it'd be that one.
I think he'll
Charlotte,
play.
the same team that has drawn the ire of the NFL Players Association for the turf damage that they've done to their players, which is just it's not funny for the players, but it's comical in general that Charlotte tore up their grass field to install turf so that they could have a soccer team.
It's such poetic justice for Tepper. He's not going to get that Messi money even after he lied to his fans and promised them grass and then tore up the grass and put down turf. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I always look forward to the Baker Classico every year from now on.
There you go. We always find a way. Like Charlotte keeps giving us stuff to talk about. I love that.
It's too easy.
We don't. It's never in the notes either. It's just like just an organic conversation that always just somehow happens.
I love it. See ya, Stuart. Stuart left. You did the Irish goodbye as we told him to. I'm glad. I love it.
Phenomenal.
Matt, I've been wanting to ask this question anyway. This is the perfect time to bring it up. Chris Gebhardt asked, what were your thoughts about Allianz Field? And was it raining as hard as it looked? Tell us about the trip in general. Anything you want.
My trip was fun. We went up, a buddy of mine, Jeff and I went up on late Friday night. We did the Twins game Saturday afternoon, City game Saturday night, and then we went to the Minnesota Vikings game on Sunday. So 3 stadiums in 2 days. It's just a fun trip. We went to Blackheart, the soccer bar across the metro line from Allianz. Yeah. That was a great time. Fans were welcoming. We were giving each other a hard time back and forth, and it was just a good atmosphere. They were very welcoming. Allianz Field, I honestly think that may be the best soccer specific stadium I've ever been to outside of City Park.
Is this your first time there?
Yes, first time there. I've been to Sporting Kansas City. I've been to Sporting Park, Children's Mercy. Been to Lower.com in Columbus, TQL in Cincinnati, Austin Q2, and PayPal Park out in San Jose. And I was pretty blown away by Allianz Field. The architecture in it is super cool as you're walking up to it. It's got kind of like a curvature to it that really sets itself apart from when you're walking up to any other stadium. It just seems so, and it retains that soccer specific stadium look, unlike TQL, which feels very much like a spaceship dropped in the middle of nowhere. Like I think they went overboard on their light show and display on the outside. It is much more inviting and much more just down to earth at Allianz, even though the location leaves some to be desired. So it's not in downtown St. Paul. It's more like in between Minneapolis and St. Paul on the St. Paul side, but there's also some like department stores right across the street. It's one of those kinds of things. The Metro line's pretty close, but so location wise left things to be desired, but inside the stadium was fantastic. It very much felt like what I hoped it would feel like watching it on TV, where we were in the opposite quarter from the Wonderwall, but their section looks fun. Like ours at City Park is fantastic. It's wide. Theirs is one of those that is the entire side, the entire end line is supporters, and it's not built symmetrically. It's almost built like you could. First of all, they have the loon graphic in their seats, and it's built like kind of this little wall that curves itself up to the middle. And then on the other side, they've got a brew hall, and it's got an old school analog clock and scoreboard above it. So it gives really kind of this old timey vibe to it. in addition
Cool.
to the lights that you can see displayed on the outside. You can see it on the inside too, on the inside of the canopy architecture. That's kind of a cool vibe. So it's got a nice mix of old and new. The brew pub itself was really fun. They stayed open for, it's kind of like the Ultra Club or Hellcat. It stays open for a little bit after the game, and we were just hanging out, and that was fun. So it was a really nice architecturally looking stadium. It was a nice atmosphere. It was pouring rain for the entire game. That was one thing though, is their canopy doesn't cover everything. And so there was an entire end line by the brew hall opposite from their supporter section that was getting poured on the entire time. And you could probably tell from the broadcast, especially in the second half, how empty it was behind one of the goals. I think it was the goal that St. Louis was shooting on in the second half, if I recall. But that was drenched, and everybody was kind of just scattered from there. So there's some, with the weather and rain and everything, there were definitely some issues in certain parts of the stadium. But other than that, I would absolutely rate this top tier stadium.
Sounds amazing. I think that's like the number one I want to see. I want to see Columbus too, because a friend of mine, I'm going to end up going with a friend of mine because he's like a big Columbus guy in general, just every sports team in Columbus. And Minnesota is Stuart's former home. So it's too bad he couldn't stay for this one. But any other thoughts on Minnesota? I know you saw like 3 games in one weekend, right?
Yeah, that was, honestly, a city win there was more than we expected. And it earned us points that we banked very well. And so it allows us to do things like this weekend, win, and then potentially clinch the conference. Like, it makes conversations like that much more real in a game that I don't think many people realistically expected us to go in and win with a rotated lineup. So the experience was great. The weather, who cares when it's pouring rain as long as City's winning? Like, let it rain, let it pour. Let St. Louis City score, because they did, and it was awesome. And then it was just a fun weekend, and I'm glad that we did the business and can look forward to having so much magic happen in Kansas City. Because when we invite Sporting to come play, we talked about it on the radio portion. It's got history for St. Louis. It's got history for SKC. So many things. For a win can cause so many good things to happen. Talking about getting sole leadership of the number one amount of wins from any expansion team.
That'd be amazing.
In MLS. That can happen. We could clinch home field, potentially clinch the conference this weekend. Like, these are realizing some of those dream expectations or dream visions that we just threw out to the ether at the beginning of the season. It's like, oh, what's your expectations? Well, we'd love to make the playoffs. But thinking in the back of our mind, like, we saw what happened with City 2 last year. We saw what Lutz and Bradley Carnell are bringing in. Like, things could be possible. Like, pie in the sky, but you don't want to say it into existence. You don't want to put it out there too early. But now that it's happening, it's getting really, really hard not to keep saying these things and to keep just touting them wherever you can, shouting them into the Twitterverse. And because why not? Be a proud St. Louis City fan. That's my biggest takeaway, is no other expansion team can really say this. And no other expansion team has ever won their conference. That's a fact. So if when this does happen, be proud, tout it to the world. This is something that we can own until it's not ours to own. And we should be absolutely proud of what this organization has put together consistently, what the fan base has done in showing out, traveling, all of the things. And it's led to some other fan bases really getting annoyed with us in how much we like to toot our own horn a lot, but we've earned it at this point. This isn't unearned confidence.
Are you talking about Cincinnati?
It doesn't ring a bell. I don't know what you're talking about.
We haven't won hardware, but at some point you have to say, okay, what your body of work so far, like hardware or no hardware yet, because you're still in the middle of the season. It's not like we're going to go out and put a TIFO out that says we crushed this league just because we won the conference. Like, that's not our style. But we can still talk about how proud we are of our team and the historic nature of every step of the way.
I love it. It's so hard to believe. Like, I every once in a while I think about the beginning of the season and the expectations everybody had, like including us, or even when we asked Lutz and Bradley Carnell, and like, to me personally, like I said, the team will be competitive. We'll probably be in the bubble towards the end of the season, but look where the team is right now. And I remember Lutz didn't commit. He was like, we're not going to say we're going to be in the 6th position, 5th position, or whatever, but we know we're going to be competitive. And they always talk about these internal goals. And it's just amazing to see it come to fruition, and the team making history, like breaking records week to week. And now it's about to break another one.
And we'll talk more the historical like context of it all after the season when all is said and done. But this week especially, Chris Gebhardt mentioned in the chat, FCC brought this out, and it's off of some admittedly dumb Twitter poll where it was a goal of the week nominee, and because one of their nameless, faceless fan accounts called Jabulu Blom a scumbag, like the City Army and the South African Army joined together to say absolutely not. Like, you don't do that about probably our most beloved player. And to me, it comes full circle from when MLS2 STL was a thing. And I mean, I do mean MLS2 STL back in 2016, 2017, when we had the bid with Jim Kavanaugh and Paul Edgerly, when we were putting it to the public vote in St. Louis City, if everybody remembers that. The city that we were competing with at the time for an MLS bid was Cincinnati.
Yeah.
The team that got an MLS team because we didn't, because our vote failed, was Cincinnati. They were the bridesmaid to our bride, and they never let us live it down after that happened, that they got a team and we didn't, making it seem like it was a failure on St. Louis's part to be wanted by MLS, which is quite the opposite. And it led to the fact that Cincinnati claims that their catastrophic 3-year run, their 3-year wooden spoon run, was because they only had 9 months to build a roster, because they won their bid in like May of 2018 and they started in 2019.
But that was their choice.
It was not only their
right?
choice.
No,
it was part of their. It was definitely their choice, but it was part of their selling themselves to MLS, saying, "Hey, we have a stadium ready to go. We're using University of Cincinnati Stadium. We have a roster that's crushing USL. We can just take that and start to migrate that over to MLS, and it'll be fine. We're good to go in 9 months." It was part of their bid to sell themselves. Some of their fans were even admitting that they might not have gotten MLS if it weren't for that ready-made ability, because Nashville got a bid right before them, just a few months. It was either right before or right after, a few months difference. They waited until 2020 to start. They didn't need to say, "Oh, we're ready to go. We can start right now if you're willing to take us." And so they were able to be much more competitive right off the bat, a lot quicker than Cincinnati was. So the downfall is all on their own, and it does tie back to all of the stuff that happened. I'm really sad that Stu had to drop, because he was at the heart and soul with me on this MLS to STL against MLS to Cincy. It was a thing back in 2017, and it still has a lot of scar tissue going on. And so this week has peeled that back a little bit. That's why I'm so passionate about this stupid Twitter poll and the back and forth that's happened this week.
Cincy fans won't hear this, but part of this wasn't even like a St. Louis connection. It's you were always going to lose that poll, and it's mainly because of Kaiser Chiefs in South Africa. Like, they don't know that South Africa and Kaiser Chiefs fans show out online for Jabulu Blom, like just go crazy for him. So like, add that to maybe feeling better about what happened with that poll. But the ugliness came outside of that poll, really, more so than the poll itself. So it is what it is. Man, Matt, they called you Spicy Matt on YouTube here just now, and you got spicy there. I forgot about them getting their bid that way.
I'll own the spiciness, and I feel like it's been. Who was it? There was one of the Nashville fans. Yeah, one of the Nashville fans had commented about, like, he was hoping or waiting or something for Cincinnati and St. Louis fans, and I told him, I was like, it's just been laying dormant for 6 years now, and it's been waiting to pop off for a lot of us who have been following things and been passionate about trying to get a team here for that long. And yeah, they can't rest on their own fact that they're finally a first place team. It's there's no humble pie as part of this.
And man, I was looking, because this Cincinnati is like the Cincinnati I think of when they were in the USL, because they had a great team almost every year in the USL, and they let us know it. And once they got those years of of humility, I thought it was going to disappear. I thought it was going to be better. And I also worried that St. Louis fans might have too much success and become FC Cincinnati fans. And
I
just
hope not.
No, I don't think I don't think it's going to happen. I think it would be happening already. I'm proud of St. Louis fans for not, being disgusting about this. At least if they were, I missed it. But I think they held their own and did well, and I'm really proud of what I saw in St. Louis fans on here. They took it easy, and they took the crazy fandom in stride, the online idiocy in stride, and just moved past it for the most part. And I love that.
I do think there's definitely a large measure of appropriate reactions for St. Louis fans. Like there's going to be your fan accounts who kind of tit for tat type of thing.
Yeah.
But by and large, if you look back at what St. Louis fans have gotten hyped about and how and why and what they've said and everything, it's mostly been reactionary, honestly, to national pundits counting us out, to fans saying, "You're new here, sit down," type of a thing. When we keep winning, it's like, and that's what has enabled us, is not just keep winning, but the manner in which we win and the way that our roster was constructed.
Yeah.
Because all of those things inform this blue collar, down to earth mentality, where it's not just happy to be here, it's appreciating the things that we've been able to do because of the players that nobody expected to be able to do those things, like Josh Yarrow, AZ Jackson, Akil Watts, Sam Adeniran, castaways from other MLS and USL sides who we've been able to turn into just pure shining diamonds.
I feel like the fans, like the players, like the staff, it's all this attitude of a chip on our shoulder. And let's keep it in that zone, everybody. Let's keep it like right there, because the second we become the best fans in baseball, or, if we I'm so glad we pumped the brakes on the soccer capital thing. And now we're like, we found the thing we're going to be proud of, and we're sick of arguing with it outside of the 2 or 3 games that we have with KC. Like, I love where everything is settled in. Like, we can go crazy with that when we play Kansas City. And other than that, let's just have that chip on our shoulders. Let's not go crazy. Let's not start declaring that we're the best thing this planet's ever seen. I've not seen that from St. Louis and St. Louisans on the whole. Let's keep it there, everybody. I love the way that our fans have been so far. And on game day, we're unmatched, and we're still not braggy about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going well. I love it. So keep it up, everybody, if you're listening. This is good stuff.
100%.
I think I'm going to play a clip for you guys. There's a conversation I haven't asked you guys if you want to have. Is there anything we need to talk about before we go into another topic that I know you guys will be interested in talking about?
I want to talk about City 2 at some point.
Oh, let's do that first.
Yeah, me too.
And then if there's no time,
somebody asked on the chat. Yeah,
please do.
Oh, it was Chris. It was Chris, and that was before Stu left.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to talk City 2.
Yeah, the playoff match, of course. Yeah.
Right. So the first thing, if anybody's not familiar, but they're listening to this, of why we're playing Earthquakes 2, MLS Next Pro instituted a new policy for their playoff selection process. And it was basically the number 1, number 2, number 3 seeds in the conference got to choose their own adventure, choose their own opponent. And so you had the top of the table conference teams of the Tacoma Defiance and Santi, who was the other one?
Tacoma Defiance, Sporting KC, Austin.
Was it Tacoma and Sporting?
The ones picking were Tacoma and Sporting.
Yeah,
so Tacoma picked Houston. Tacoma picked the last place team, Houston,
which made sense. You
Sporting,
figure
KC. Yeah, and go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
No, you had it. Yeah, and then Sporting Kansas City came up, and they posted a video afterwards of all of the coaches, GMs. It was Benny Feilhaber, Lutz Pfannenstiel were on the call, and Benny says, "Scared money don't make money," and then he picks Austin FC, a team higher up in the table from St. Louis City too. And if you haven't seen the video,
Lutz shows more emotion than I've ever seen this man show on
That
TV.
was amazing.
If you haven't seen Colorado Rapids 2 got a bye. That's what I'm thinking of earlier and why they didn't pick. Colorado Rapids 2 had a bye.
Yeah.
So in the table, Tacoma, Sporting Kansas City, Austin 2, City 2, Earthquakes 2, Dynamo 2. Tacoma picked Houston, Dynamo to the bottom. When Sporting picked Austin, it was with Benny's tongue-in-cheek, I hope, of "Scared money don't make money." Lutz lost it on the video Go back and watch it because
So good.
you want to play poker with this Lutz. He does not hide anything. He just sits back in his chair. He just laughs. He throws his arms up, and he says to Benny that he's like, "Oh, I thought for sure you're going to pick us. We already had our bus picked out."
He wasn't
already had-
joking.
That was awesome.
He was like, "We'll
Yeah.
have to cancel it, but I'm happy about it."
Yeah.
and so the scared money don't make money is hilarious because
Yeah, that's good stuff.
looking at these teams, and I talked to one of the Kansas City guys, Mike by the Byline, who used to be with the SB Nation affiliate for Sporting, and he made the point that it makes all the sense in the world. Like this was the right pick for Sporting KC2. Austin has been in terrible form lately. They've fallen off from what their form was at the beginning of the season. They're awful away, so it just makes sense for Sporting KC2 to pick Austin. Like the way the team's form has been, that it makes sense statistically. What doesn't make sense is when you say scared money don't make money as your justification. Because if you're wanting to test yourself against the most informed team that is available to select, there's only one option, and it's City 2. Home and away.
City 2.
Since July, St. Louis City 2 has been on fire. They found their consistent roster. They found their key playmakers in Johnny Klein, Caden Glover, Faisal Batachi. They've had massive performances by Michael Wenzel, by Max Schneider, Juan Kuzain, Sergio Rivas. All of these players have put City 2 on such an amazing trajectory since the start of their season. To finish 11-8-9, to finish with a plus 10 goal differential, they've done the impossible compared to what they were doing earlier in the year. And so now St. Louis City 2 gets to pick their opponent, which you look at in the table, City 2 finished 5th, the Earthquakes 2 finished 6th. Now City 2, because of Benny Feilhaber's let's just say his guardedness against playing City 2, because of that, City 2 gets to host a playoff game this Sunday at City Park. First ever playoff game at City Park, first ever professional playoff game. It's at 5:00. City 2 has been going all out in trying to sell this. I've gotten message. I know supporters groups have talked about it. I know the club has sent out reminders of tickets. I know they've done a special thing for season ticket holders, inviting them to be the bench warmers, so getting to go over pitch side. Awesome things for season ticket holders for City 2. I've even got messages from the CYC here in St. Louis with discounted tickets. So they're going through youth organizations. They're trying to pack the park as quickly as possible. So it'll be interesting to see how full it gets compared to the 2 record-breaking attendances that they've had earlier this year. But regardless, this is a team that you don't want to bet against. This is a team with Johnny Klein having been just awarded the goal of the year for his bicycle kick at City Park to end the season. And with Caden Glover, Faisal Batachi so in form, the offense is firing on all cylinders. And this is going to be a really fun team to watch Sunday at 5 p.m.
It is. And it's a good mix. It's a cool mix of players. Yes, it's much younger, and I think they had to learn how to get their feet under them, under this, this roster that they have. But the fact that we got the fact that Juan Kuzain's coming off the bench in most of these games
that's crazy.
Insane. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, I mean, just so much firepower off the bench and so many kids to throw in there at the end and fill these slots and use their legs and learn and improve. It's been great. I listened to Scuffed podcast recently, and their best episodes every year are the ones talking about the youth system in the United States. And so they did a U17 because the U17 World Cup's coming up, and they talked about that. And Caden Glover got some talk on there. I don't think they're like in love with Caden Glover by any means, but he's going to be in that World Cup, I think. And the fact that he's in past years, there have been guys getting more pro minutes in this U17 cycle than what has happened recently. And they're blaming COVID a little bit for that. That's totally fine. It's going to happen. But Caden's one of those guys that's gotten some pro minutes this year, and that's pretty unusual in that group. And so
he has a score. He has a score too.
Yes. Well, in next he scored, but he got some minutes with the senior team too, right? I think it was one game.
I think it was one game just against Chicago.
Yep,
Yeah,
he
so that's
featured.
pretty rare. And so the fact that he is where he is in his development and he's gotten some pro minutes this year it's a big deal. Not every team's willing to take that chance or give those kids those minutes because they're precious. Look at our roster. It's very precious to give those guys minutes. And so very cool to hear that about Caden Glover and that he's going to be one of the more experienced players in that World Cup on the USA team.
And what City 2's done in the back half of their season is really fallen into a groove. I look at a typical starting lineup over the past few months with City 2, and if you compare it to what we were seeing at the beginning of the season, which was a mix of City players getting sent down, like Akil Watts, AZ Jackson, to see significant minutes with them, along with some, like Caden Glover was injured for a period of time. Miguel Perez saw some minutes with City 2. There was a lot of flux. There was a lot of trying to figure out with guys who had played with City 2 last year, coming up from the academy, like where does everybody fit in? But just looking at their lineups for the past few weeks, you're seeing a pretty consistent starting 11 overall. Like Ezra Armstrong at the left back position, once he recovered from his injury, has been amazing out there. Like he's a guy who I would not mind being offered a City contract. I think he's at that point. I would love to see it from he's such an amazing person, and he's such an amazing part of St. Louis soccer now. He loves the fans. He will sign autographs for days. Like he's just a good dude. Past few weeks, Lucas Bartlett has joined Michael Wenzel as a center back. And so seeing Lucas Bartlett get minutes down with City 2 has been great after what we saw him do when Nilsson wasn't there.
Yeah.
Nolan Maguire has actually become
He's amazing.
He's been so good.
I like him a lot.
Me too.
Nolan Maguire, along with Caden Glover and Miguel Perez earlier in the season, Max Schneider, like these guys they're coming up. Max Schneider wasn't with our academy, but you've got Nolan Maguire, who's just the latest person. Makai Joyner is another one.
Yeah.
Aaron Hurd, Riley Gibbs. These are Josh Mayer. Don't forget Josh Mayer. These are all guys who have seen consistent minutes for this win streak for City 2, who have come up from the academy that started now 3 years ago, or is in their third season, have come up through the saw minutes with UPSL side, and now seeing featured with professional City 2. Like the pathway is presenting itself in such an in-your-face manner because these guys complement people that we can bring on, like Max Schneider from last year, like Faisal Batachi. We kept Juan Cuze and Sergio Rivas seeing significant minutes. Johnny Klein being drafted straight out of SLU. Michael Wenzel signed from Europe. All of these guys from different areas that they're putting in here, they found a groove, and they found kind of the answer to unlock it all from the academy, from external signings, from City 2 last year, and City coming down. It's amazing to see how they've just figured it out. And credit to Bobby Murphy for figuring the lineup, figuring the players, and figuring himself out as a coach and what he needs to do to unlock the potential in these players. That's like seeing all of this come together after this full season, in which halfway through the season, you figure, okay, this is just now the development league. We don't need to worry about it as much. Like they're going to throw City players down there. They're going to be fun to watch. And if they win a game here and there, that it is what it is. But we kind of see that it might end up being this way. But no, it's the competitiveness when you put all these pieces together in the different development stages that these players are at, and their ability to come together under Bobby Murphy has been very impressive.
I heard recently it was Lutz had a quote, and he says this every few months, and it is so cool. I just love his vision. Everything you just said, Matt, about like pulling players from our academy, but also like looking abroad. That is, if you guys don't know, that's part of what Philly Union does. Like they don't just pull from their own, they look around the world. So he's, unsurprisingly perfectly running this City 2 team in the academy. And he says every couple months, he says something like, we will be relying on these academy players to be our best players going forward. He's not just like saying we need them to fill some slots here and there. He's relying on them being like, we're going to have the next Ricardo Pepi, or, the next Sullivan kid that's coming up that's supposed to be the next best American player. And he's 13 right now. And he might play in this U17 World Cup. Like, he's expecting to get that out of St. Louis, and the talent's here. They just need some guidance and opportunities, and now they're getting that. And I'm so excited about that, especially. And if you're not watching City 2, please watch it. You know, if you're a good Cardinals fan, if you're the best Cardinals fan, you're watching the Redbirds and you're watching the Springfield Cardinals and down on even lower than that. You know, all these players coming up from below, and you got to be watching our academy. You got to be watching our City 2 players because they are our future. And you can see the talent. Some of these kids are ready already. Matt named them all.
Yeah.
They're ready. They can get there. They can serve a purpose. Not only that, in 1 or 2 years, they may be some of our better players. I'm so excited for it.
And we're seeing it already with the first team. We're seeing Akil Watts getting minutes. Josh Jarrow, even though he's a player with previous MLS experience, now he's important for the first team. Kyle Heaver, like you're already seeing the results of City 2. But I want to ask you guys a question, since Matt kind of brought it up with when he was talking about Ezra. I was thinking, is it too early to ask about it? But since you brought it up, what would be your over/under number of City 2 players that get a first team contract for 2024?
It's not going to be as high as I want.
Well, I struggle with this question because there's
Me
a push
too.
pull. There's a push pull of remaining competitive for City, but still giving the opportunity for those who've earned it. But I do, on players like Ezra, I do point to the success that the organization has had with Josh Yarrow, with Akil Watts. AZ Jackson's a little on the young side too, but some of these guys who others have clearly cast away, and they're not young like to where we can expect to develop them and sell them on for a significant amount, but that can be meaningful contributors in an Open Cup competition, in a Leagues Cup competition, that you could loan down if you need to City 2 so they could still remain competitive there. They could fill in during injuries. And Ezra plays left back. What's the one position that we've really struggled with throughout the year to find our identity in? Left back.
Yeah.
He could be the answer.
And
I didn't answer your question at all about the over-under. I'm just purposefully, I'll say
it's a good exercise, though.
Does Caden Glover count, and does Max Schneider count because they are already under contract?
No, I would say no, because they already have a contract.
I know.
No,
I will say
no. Let's change the question, because I do think I don't think Glover counts, but I think Schneider counts. I think
I guess it's
over under on those players who are going to get minutes with the senior team, because Schneider didn't get minutes, so that's why I don't count him.
I'll say 2 if minutes counts as depth, and they'll see U.S. Open Cup, Leagues Cup, injuries. They'll fight for spots on the game day roster. I'll say 2 from City 2 this year.
And I will say 2 minimum. Like, it has to be at least 2. I think it could be as high as 4. So I'll say 4. I would really like to see 4 get a chance. And then I would say 1 might be a homegrown, which won't count in that number. But I would love to see 4.
Yeah, if it's minutes and Schneider counts, my answer is 3.
Okay. Yeah, we're all on the same page, basically.
Yeah. Yep. I could go with 3 if Schneider counts.
Yeah. As a podcast, I think we're basically saying 3.
And
Great question, Santiago. Thanks, man.
Just as an aside, because City 2, it's building on the conversation of development players with City 2. We do have a UPSL team that is not a professional team. They're amateurs. It's the bridge between the U17 Academy and City 2. I think it's not a specific age limitation, I don't think, but it's basically like a U21, U23 type of a team. And it's coached by Charlie Rankin. I think he's the head coach, if I remember correctly. And we're seeing...
I thought it was Luis.
Oh, Luis Swisher. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
yes.
Luis, you're right.
It's Luis Swisher. Yes, you're right. Thank you for not letting me get that wrong. But we're seeing guys like... Remember Jackson Delkus? Talking about him with the academy? The headband, the chime. He scored 3 goals in 4 games with the UPSL side this year. I'm looking at their stats. It's upsl.com, and just check out City's academy team on there. They're doing great to start this year. They do a fall season, they do a spring season. Anthony Falpel, he saw time with City 2 last year. He came up from the academy. He's got 3 goals. Kai Pope has 3 goals. Nate Harmon 3 goals. Riley Gibbs, who's seen time with City 2, has 2 goals. So I just want to give a quick plug to the fact that our development throughout the levels of the academy, we're seeing guys who started in the U16 level, who's now at the UPSL level, thinking of Jackson Delkus, and are still progressing up. Like that's why you pay attention to the academy. You don't need to like dig into every single player because the stats are hard to find for the academy. They don't do a great job with MLS Next of publishing it all. But when you hear big names, when the City Academy Twitter or when City 2, when they highlight certain players, just keep them in mind because they're developing into the true future of our organization. And these are the guys that we can expect to see homegrown contracts in the future. And it's so cool just to say, I remember watching them when they were in the academy and now they're scoring goals in MLS.
I just think about that, like 2021 when the academy started playing and we went to some of those games, and you keep seeing some of those names, like Miguel Perez is now with the first team. You mentioned Jackson Delcus. He next following year basically this year he played with the U17s, and now he's with the UPSL. So it's awesome to see.
And some of them are getting national team call-ups with the youth team, like attending youth camps. Tyson Pierce. We haven't even talked about Tyson Pierce in all of this, and he has a homegrown contract for next year.
So he counts.
He counts. Yes.
Man, so much goodness coming up about that. So I can't wait for that playoff game, the first City. I totally didn't think about that. The first City playoff game in City Stadium. That's going to be so much fun. So,
are you guys going?
I need to make sure. It just happened, and I haven't checked my schedule yet, to be honest. I assume I was going. I was going to drop everything I had and just go.
That's a nice assumption.
Yeah, I know.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, you guys know, like when City plays, like I'm watching the games, but I'm working. So I really enjoy going to City 2's games just because I'm really with the supporters and
could be a fan.
No worry about anything, be a fan. So I'm looking forward to going on Sunday and hanging out on the North End.
Pretty sure I can go, and I intend to go. So we'll see what kind of shape I'm in. We're supposed to start early on Saturday with no kids and extended family who are partiers. So
and
there's lots going on.
Mode.
Do they like soccer?
It's gonna hurt. Yes. Oh, we're all obsessed with soccer. Yeah. And so there's a lot to do this weekend. Let's close with this. I intend to go to the Urban Chestnut Oktoberfest at some point Saturday. So say hi if you see me. I'll probably wear this exact jersey. I'll wear it again. And also that Tim Parker thing at Four Hands is on Sunday, right?
Yeah, I think you were. I don't think we started streaming the wind down when we said this, but Stu and I were talking about Oktoberfest, I think, while you were stepping away.
Yeah.
And that I think I'm going on Friday debating wearing my City jersey under my lederhosen. So if you go Friday, you might see me. If you go Sunday, you might see Phil. And Urban Chestnut Oktoberfest, one of the best events of the year. It's going to be fun. And then the Parker Pilsner Party. I don't know if that's what it's really called, but Four Hands out in the district in Chesterfield. They're going to... on Sunday, I believe at 1:00. So City Sporting on Saturday night, the Parker Pilsner Party 1 p.m. I think in the district in Chesterfield, Four Hands New Brewery, and then City 2's playoff game 5 p.m. Sunday.
It's a lot of drinking, everybody. Let's get ready. That's it from us. We went over tonight, but boy, was it fun. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Go City.
Vamos City.